Britain's upcoming bankruptcy, the grim reality. One day you'll wake up and it's over. One day in the near future, Britain will wake up to an economic nightmare that no government press conference can spin away. The headlines won't read like a sudden accident. They'll read like a long-predicted tragedy finally arriving. This is not about politics, ideology, or party colors. This is mathematics, and mathematics doesn't negotiate. When you borrow too much, spend too much, and produce too little, the day comes when the world stops lending. Britain's upcoming bankruptcy isn't a wild conspiracy theory. It's the inevitable result of decades of financial mismanagement, political short-termism, and an economic structure built on sand. For 75 minutes, I'm going to walk you through how we got here, the warning signs flashing right now, and what your life will look like in a bankrupt Britain. And when we're done, you won't ask if, you'll ask how soon, the calm before the storm. In every great collapse, there's a moment before the fall where everything feels deceptively normal. The shops are open, the trains run, the government assures the public that everything is under control. But just like in 2008, just like in 1976, the cracks are already there, hidden behind official statements and selective statistics. The Bank of England still raises interest rates as if that will tame inflation permanently. The Treasury still insists the debt is manageable. Meanwhile, the average Briton is struggling with a cost of living crisis that has already stripped away financial stability for millions. People cling to normality because the alternative is too frightening to imagine. That is exactly why collapse always seems to come out of nowhere, even though the signs were there all along. Britain's debt tsunami. In 1976, Britain faced a similar fiscal cliff when the pound collapsed, forcing the government to request a $3.9 billion loan from the IMF, the largest in history at the time. Public services were cut, wages frozen, and inflation soared. That was during a time when global debt levels were far lower and interest rates were more effective. Historical context. After World War II, Britain's debt-to-GDP ratio exceeded today's levels, but the situation was fundamentally different. The nation had a young, expanding workforce, a powerful industrial base, and vast trade advantages through the Commonwealth. Today, the demographic structure is inverted, industries are outsourced, and trade advantages have eroded. Right now, Britain's national debt is at levels we have not seen since the end of the Second World War, roughly 100% of GDP. Back then, we had a booming post-war economy, global trade dominance, and decades of growth ahead. Today, we have stagnation, shrinking industrial output, and a tax base under pressure. In 2024, the UK spent over $110 billion on interest payments alone. To put that in perspective, that's more than the annual defense budget, more than the education budget, and close to the NHS budget for England. We are literally paying foreign investors and pension funds just to keep the lights on. This demonstrates how quickly investor confidence can collapse. Recovery is never guaranteed, and the costs to ordinary citizens can be devastating. Historical case study. In September 1992, Black Wednesday saw the pound crash out of the European exchange rate mechanism. Interest rates spiked to 15% in a single day to defend the currency, devastating homeowners and businesses. While Britain eventually recovered, the political and economic scars lasted decades. Every new pound of debt is a bet that tomorrow will be richer than today. But in modern Britain, tomorrow keeps looking poorer. The disappearing pound. Once upon a time, the pound sterling was the backbone of the global economy. It was the reserve currency before the US dollar took over. Today, it's just another mid-tier currency fighting to maintain credibility. The pound's decline is slow enough that most people don't feel it day to day, but fast enough that its purchasing power has collapsed over the past 2 decades. $100 in 2004 bought far more than $100 in 2024. Inflation is a quiet thief, stealing from savers without a single broken lock or smashed window. If investor confidence cracks, if there's a major political shock, or if the UK's credit rating drops further, the pound could enter freefall. A currency crisis would instantly make imports, food, fuel, medicine, far more expensive, worsening the cost of living crisis overnight. The death of industry. Manufacturing, once the pride of Britain, has been hollowed out. The nation that once built ships, cars, trains, and aircraft now imports much of what it consumes. Service industries dominate the GDP, but services are far more vulnerable to global downturns than manufacturing. When you can't produce your own goods at scale, you're at the mercy of those who can. The next time global supply chains seize up, as they did during COVID-19, Britain will be left scrambling again. Commercial real estate collapses have triggered crises before. Japan's 1990s crash saw property values fall over 80% in some sectors, leading to a lost decade of stagnation. Britain's exposure to similar risks could create the same outcome. Comparative history. The 2008 financial crisis hit British banks harder than many realize. Royal Bank of Scotland collapsed and required over £45 billion in government bailouts, the largest bank rescue in history at the time. The public sector time bomb. The NHS, pensions, welfare benefits, these are cornerstones of British society. But they are also fiscal time bombs. The population is aging, meaning more retirees drawing pensions and needing health care, while the working-age population paying taxes is shrinking. Even without a debt crisis, this demographic shift is unsustainable. Add in ballooning interest payments on the national debt, and it becomes catastrophic. The banking domino effect. Britain's banks are heavily exposed to commercial real estate. Offices sit empty post-pandemic, shopping centers see dwindling footfall, and property valuations are starting to fall. This is eerily similar to the U.S. regional banking crisis in 2023, but with a uniquely British twist. Our financial sector is far more concentrated in a few mega banks. If one major bank faces a liquidity crunch, the ripple effect could freeze lending, crush small businesses, and send property prices tumbling. If you like this content, like and subscribe. This is Felix. See you next time.